Now, I know I'm a bit of a boomer, but sometimes that can be a good thing. I've been around for a while and I've learnt an awful lot along the way. Now, your 20s are a fun part of your life, but they're extremely important at the same time. So here are 7 money-making habits I wish I'd known sooner, because if I did, I'd have made my first million a lot quicker, that's for sure. By watching this video all the way until the end, you'll be able to learn from my mistakes and hopefully do even better. Also, the last habit's a little bit controversial, so it might be worth sticking around for. Habit number 1 is embracing debt. I know this might sound confusing at first, as lots of people think that debt is bad, and you should avoid it like those online courses that cost $997. No, but seriously, it's one of the main reasons I was able to build my wealth from absolutely nothing to multi-millionaire. In my early 20s, I was building my businesses from the ground up, and I didn't have a lot of cash available to me, so I had to get very creative with my finances. I knew that if I wanted to grow my wealth, then I needed to control more assets. And the only way to do that was to use the power of other people's money. Now notice how I said I wanted more assets, and that's a very important point. Lots of people do the opposite and get into debt buying liabilities. Sadly, they're just digging themselves into a hole that they'll find it really hard to escape from. An easy way to find out if something is an asset or a liability is to figure out if the purchase is putting money into your pocket each month or instead just draining your wallet. My favourite thing about borrowing money is that I can buy other companies in cash, therefore getting a better price. I actually still do this today, as borrowing money is currently very cheap. How can borrowing money be cheap? This guy's a lunatic. Well, just think, if I can borrow cash at a 2% interest rate and put my money to work at an 8 to 10% return, then I'm ahead 6 to 8%. I just always make sure to run the numbers on my decisions and not leave myself too exposed to debt, so that if something went wrong, then I would be able to handle the repercussions. It's definitely true that you should be cautious of debt, but never fear using it to your advantage. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to smash that like button for the LTube algorithm, as it helps push this video out to a lot more people, and it's really appreciated. Habit number 2, being obsessed with success. I believe to become a millionaire, you must have laser focus, much like an Olympic athlete. I couldn't agree more with the quote, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you're going to be successful. Many of you aren't probably aware of this, but before I was known as a businessman, I was famous for flying radio control helicopters, and I competed to a very high standard all over the world. At one point, I won bronze medal at a world championships held in Indiana, USA. I would be obsessed with every little detail of my model. I did everything I could to win. I was absolutely relentless. To get to the top of anything, you need to put in the extra bit of work and then a little bit more. When I started my first business, I applied the same obsession. I set myself both short and long-term goals to keep focused at all times. Having a laser-like determination to succeed is key for your growth, and I was absolutely obsessed with hitting my sales targets. First, it was just to complete a year of business. Then it was to do last year's turnover in just 1 month. Then in just 1 week. But I always had the ultimate goal of becoming financially free. Even Elon Musk claims he regularly works 80 to 100 hours a week, and this is fueled by his obsession to hit his targets and meet his goals. How else will Tesla smash earnings reports and SpaceX land humans on Mars? The sad news is 60% of businesses fail within the first 3 years, and that's why focus obsession is so important. So stay focused and keep grinding. Amazon wasn't the biggest retailer overnight, and Kevin O'Leary said he would have laughed Elon Musk out of the building if he'd appeared on Shark Tank with a Tesla pitch. Habit number 3 is building income streams. As I've grown older, I must say my passive income streams have become very useful. I no longer have the energy of a 20-year-old, however, I don't have to, as I put in the work when I was younger, and now I can reap the benefits.
And you can make me do all the work as well.
Well, someone's got to. I created my first passive income stream accidentally when I refused to sell my apartment in my 20s. The apartment would have sold for around 40% less than I'd paid, and I wasn't interested in taking a hit like that, so I rented it out. This ended up being a great decision, as this paid the mortgage, and after 4 years, the apartment and sold for 60% more than I'd originally paid. So not only did I receive rent every single month totaling more than the mortgage payment, I then sold the property for a huge profit and put that money to work in the stock market. This really showed me the power of passive income and I was hooked. Now, I admit the term passive income has become a bit of a buzzword online, and the truth is no income is truly passive, as there is always something that has to be done. However, some income sources are certainly more passive than others. The idea is to create something once and have it pay you as much as possible with minimal effort. Passive income is very addictive, especially when you wake up and you realise you just got paid for sleeping. A good way to start is to grab your free stock from the public app worth all the way up to $1,000 if you're in the USA. And if you want to grab $10 worth of free Bitcoin from Coinbase, then that's open to everyone. So I'll leave those links in the doobly-doo below. Habit 4. Knowing when to quit. Now, I know this one might sound a bit strange. Quitting is usually seen as a bad thing, but in my experience it helped me go from a carpenter's apprentice earning less than $2 per hour to a millionaire by my late 20s. When I was working that minimum wage job and I first had an issue with my manager bullying me, I could have kept going and worked my way up the company gradually, but I decided to quit. That led me to starting my own business, and within a few months I was drowning in all the paperwork, so I decided to quit that job and I hired someone to help. And before I knew it, I'd replaced all the jobs I could with other people. This allowed me to focus on being the captain and steering the business in the right direction. The big lesson here is not to be too proud to quit when you don't like something or you feel the effort is not worth the reward. I see so many people struggling at university and working long days and nights for a degree they don't actually want. They have just been pushed down that path by teachers and parents. Of course, this isn't everyone, but in my opinion, quitting has its time and place, and there is no shame in admitting something isn't for you. This isn't to say that you should quit just because something's hard, but there has to be a reason to put in all the hard work. Don't let others shame you if you make the hard decision to move on to bigger and better things. After all, the opportunity costs of staying where you are could be much greater than you realise. Just imagine if I'd stayed working as a carpenter making wooden trash cans all my life. Nah, that'd never have happened. Habit number 5 is treating your body like a sports car. Brum brum. I know I might be sounding a bit like a fitness guru, but as cheesy as it is, without good health, you won't be able to unlock your full earning potential. I had to relearn this lesson recently when the pandemic hit. Lots of my staff were in lockdown, which meant I decided to work 3 months flat out. I was even in the warehouse packing and shipping orders with minimal staff, as I didn't want to let my customers down. I actually worked 15 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 months straight. I got very steps that anyone can learn from, but they're buried under so much filler content that it takes ages to get to the gold. So as a millionaire businessman myself, I wondered if I could use my knowledge to cut through all the waffle. That's why over the last 3 months, I've made it my mission to read all these books and note down the key points that will actually make you rich. So I've divided them into 4 categories: how to start with no money, how to sell anything to anyone, how to market your business, and how to manage your money like the 1%. Now, you may think some of these categories may not appeal to you, but trust me, put them together and they could make you a force to be reckoned with in the business world. Let's get on to the first section. So how to start with no money has got to be one of the most Googled questions ever. So let's dive into it. Step 1 is to find your strengths. This seems pretty obvious. However, society has conditioned us to actually focus on improving our weaknesses rather than doubling down on our strengths. But the reality is, you can be 10 times more successful if you focus on following the path of least resistance. In other words, the stuff you're already good at. Strength Finder 2.0 says your strengths come down to a simple equation. Talent times investment equals strength. Let's use golf as an example. I enjoy playing at my local club. Although I'm not bad, I'm far from great. Suppose you took both Tiger Woods and me at the age of 13 and gave us the same amount of coaching and practice. I'm willing to bet that every hour he practiced would equate to about 10 of mine. This is because his inherent talent for the sport is significantly higher, giving him a larger multiplier. That's why this book is so great, as it helps you find your most powerful multiplier, so you can make more progress than others in a shorter amount of time. Once you start thinking of weaknesses as an expense you need to minimize, your time will become so much more effective. You can always find people who can make up for your weaknesses. How to Win Friends and Influence People gives some great networking techniques you can try out. So before we move on, ask yourself this: have you been trying to become successful through fixing your weaknesses or through developing and employing your innate strengths? Step 2, come up with an idea. Now that you understand the importance of playing to your strengths, it's equally as important to choose a business idea where you have an advantage. This is because every company that goes belly up has one thing in common: they couldn't outrun the competition. 0 to 1 was written by Peter Thiel, the man who sold PayPal to eBay for $1.5 billion. What's even more impressive is that his original team, who received his personal mentorship, went on to establish companies like YouTube and LinkedIn. Given the number of successful businesses he's influenced, it's clear that he's mastered the secret of generating billion-dollar ideas. He says that billion-dollar business ideas come from betting on a contrarian truth. This is a real truth about how people will act in the future that they aren't aware of or don't want to admit. Steve Jobs believed that we didn't want a keypad on our phone. Very few people agree with him, especially as BlackBerry was the most popular phone at the time, and that thing was literally riddled with buttons. I bet you guys don't even remember Blackberries. But he believed in his vision and was rewarded after releasing the iPhone and changing the world forever. This isn't an isolated example. Uber believed that we would feel comfortable getting into a stranger's car, and Netflix believed we would want to binge watch TV shows. If you're struggling to come up with a contrarian truth, then give Start With Why a read, as it will get you thinking in the right kind of way. Perhaps you're not aiming to start a billion-dollar business, but consider the things you believe can be improved by adopting a slightly different approach. People will probably think you're crazy at first, but that's okay. Going against the grain lets you carve out a massive advantage before anyone else even notices what you're up to. This means you won't have to worry about competition for a very long time. Step 3 is create a plan. Now you know what you're good at and you've got your idea, you need to get very clear on how your business is going to be structured. Otherwise, you're just going to be running around like a headless chicken, not knowing where to focus your attention. Business model generation is a collective effort from 470 entrepreneurs, professors, and CEOs across 45 different countries. They were able to break down any business model into the essential 9 building blocks that make up any business. They believe that many business plans are overloaded with text and that using visuals can be much more powerful. Let's do it together so you can see how it's done. Rather than boring you with the cliche lemonade stand example, which, let's be real, no one's actually gonna do that, I'm going to outline a business that I reckon could be a real winner right now. Let's call it Timmy's Membership Builders. Firstly, Timmy loves watching educational YouTubers, but gets frustrated because lots of the advice is generic and doesn't really apply to him. So Timmy decides this is what he wants to change. He wants to create a way YouTubers can interact with viewers on a more personal level by building their membership platforms. This is Timmy's value proposition. Next, Timmy needs to identify his customers. Assuming that approximately 0.1% of YouTube subscribers will want to join a membership, he should collaborate with YouTubers who have over 1 million subscribers. This strategy will generate enough value to justify his business venture. Now Timmy needs to figure out what channels he can use to reach his customers. He might choose email, DMs, or even physical letters. You're probably thinking, if a YouTuber has over 1 million subscribers, then they're going to be pretty hard to reach. But I can tell you from experience, business. If you have a good value proposition, then someone on their team will see your message. We aren't as unreachable as you might think. Building customer relationships is the hardest part. That's why Timmy may have to start off working for free to build up some case studies and then offer his first clients discounts for referring him to their friends. Focus less on what you can gain and more on what you can give, as this forms stronger relationships. If you're struggling, then you can always read Give and Take. Now consider revenue streams. Timmy could choose to charge a percentage of revenue for managing memberships, freeing up the YouTuber to concentrate on producing videos. If Timmy took a 10% cut from a membership of 10,000 people, each paying $5 a month, it would amount to $5,000 of monthly revenue. As the membership grows, this figure will increase. Now Timmy needs to work out what he needs to make this all happen. These include his key resources like a website, key activities such as advertising, and then key partnerships, which may include working closely with a developer. Finally, Timmy needs to calculate his costs. If he can do this business for less than what he expects to earn, then he's on the right track. If not, this evaluation will save him from disappointment in the future. That brings us to step 4, building a minimum viable product. The harsh truth is many entrepreneurs put their head down and work for months on a product, but don't realize that they're building something that no one actually wants to buy. The lean startup suggests that instead of working super hard to create the most polished product, you should create something called a minimum viable product, or MVP. What's great about this is that it doesn't actually have to cost you any money. The founder of Dropbox made a short video showing how his file storage solution worked and managed to increase his waiting list from 5,000 to 75,000 people in the space of a couple of days. The amazing thing about this story is that the video was fake. The product didn't even actually exist yet, but he was then able to use the waiting list to convince investors that it was a good idea, and then he was able to make it into a reality. There are so many ways that you can make a free MVP nowadays, especially with the help of AI. If you want some inspiration, then the ChatGPT Millionaire is a great little read. You could use your MVP to appeal to investors, launch a Kickstarter campaign, find a business partner, or bootstrap by reinvesting the profits back into building your business. The crucial point to keep in mind is that if you're starting with no money and looking for any kind of funding, you must provide undeniable proof of product demand. Step 5, execute your vision. Now, having a plan, an idea, and an MVP isn't that precious. Lots of people make it to this stage, but what really matters is the execution. The crazy thing is, most people have the capacity to double or triple their income by consistently applying what they already know. The issue is, people don't put in the work. The 12-week year proposes a new way to get more done in 12 weeks than 12 months. It suggests that we should break our year into 4 and think of those quarters as our year. This may sound silly as it's still the same amount of time. However, this way of thinking forces you to confront your results every 3 months. I don't know about you, but personally, when I've got a deadline, I work a lot harder. My businesses have a different buzz around the office when we're nearing the end of the year. So by using this approach, instead of having that buzz of motivation once, we can have it 4 times a year. As Parkinson's law states, work expands to fit the amount of time we allocate to it. Therefore, applying the 12-week year approach, we can actually achieve more and make significant progress towards building the business you want. However, this 12-week approach only works if you respect your deadlines. If you're the type of person who battles with procrastination, then Extreme Ownership is worth a read. It's packed with Navy SEAL tactics to whip your discipline into shape. Can you handle the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Quick one from me before we get into the next section, and forgive my voice. I'm filming this a few days after, as I've been quite ill. One of the best ways to start an online business nowadays is to turn your skills, passions, and experiences into online courses, exclusive membership sites, subscription podcasts, thriving communities, personalized coaching, and more. These types of businesses are extremely cost effective to set up and run. They also have the upside of being extremely scalable. I know multiple people making millions using this business model, all from their laptop. If any of that sounds interesting, then Kajabi is the perfect tool for you. It's the ultimate all-in-one platform that helps people build successful online businesses by unlocking predictable recurring revenue. They're also sponsoring this portion of the video, but before you skip, if you're an entrepreneur, trust me, you want to listen to this. Recurring revenue is the holy grail in the business world. I mean, there's a reason why everything's turning into a subscription nowadays. If you know how much money's coming in every month, then it gives you the confidence you need to expand your business and eventually hire people without worrying too much about your cash flow. Kajabi is a great choice as they don't take a cut from your revenue because everything is owned and controlled by you, so you keep 100% of what you earn. So if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, then right now Kajabi is offering a free 30-day trial to start your business if you go to kajabi.com/Mark. So go to kajabi.com/Mark and join the creators and entrepreneurs who have collectively made over $7 billion. Right, let's get back to the books.
So, how to sell anything to anyone. This section isn't just important for business, but in all aspects of your life. Maybe you want to persuade your friend to help you, your boss to listen to you, or even your parents to give you more pocket money. The reality is, we're all selling in some way, although some of us are much better skilled at it than others. Step 1, set the frame. Believe it or not, most people fail before they even ask for what they want because they don't warm up whoever they're talking to before trying to persuade them. Persuasion shares techniques you can use to make people more receptive towards your request before even asking. In this book, there's a story about a consultant who was having a hard time because people kept asking for discounts on his services. So he came up with a clever trick. Before he'd tell them his price, he'd joke, well, as you can see, I can't exactly charge you $1 million for this. After he started using this joke, guess what? No one asked for a discount anymore, and he could happily charge $75,000 for his expertise. This sneaky little trick is called price anchoring. It's all about that first piece of information or the anchor that people latch onto. They then base their understanding of everything else around that. Framing, however, extends far beyond what we say. Non-verbal communication makes up 55% of all communication, and much of that is influenced by how we dress. That's why I recommend considering some of the advice in this little book, Style the Man. Remember, don't be in a hurry when it comes to setting the frame before asking for what you want. Trust me, using these strategies can flip the whole scenario in your favor. Step 2 is build rapport. The art of the deal starts with Trump taking us through a week in his life. The thing that struck out to me was the sheer amount of calls he took per day. We're talking between 50 and 100 calls. This habit of regular check-ins kept Trump at the forefront of people's minds. So when a business deal came up that was advantageous for Trump, or he had something to sell, it was easier to close the deal due to his multiple nurtured connections. Today, we can achieve this by building a personal brand on social media. Gary Vee emphasizes this in his book, Crushing It. Having a personal brand increases our touch points with people before we attempt to sell anything to them, therefore increasing the likelihood of future sales. Remember, people do business with people they like. Step 3, become more persuasive. So now you've set the frame and built the rapport, you need to be able to persuade people to give you what you want. To sell is human. Argues that the most effective way to do this is to attune with your prospect. I know that sounds a bit wishy-washy, but the experiment the book talks about makes this all start to come together. 152 students were instructed to negotiate the sale of a gas station. They were divided into 2 main groups, buyers and sellers. The buyer group was further split into 3 subgroups. The first subgroup was instructed to focus on being empathetic to the sellers, the second on the seller's thoughts, and the third on their own role. The highest number of successful deals came from the subgroup that focused on understanding the seller's thoughts. Great deals always come when the buyers and sellers are in tune with each other. Pitch Anything makes a solid point that when most people pitch, they're too busy thinking about what they want and not what their prospects are thinking. They assume that the audience care as much about their business as they do. But here's the harsh truth, they don't. Step 4, collaborate effectively. Now that you're attuned to each other, what if you could transform a sales negotiation into a collaboration instead of a one-sided process? Well, Never Split the Difference suggests you can by asking something called calibrated questions. Once you both feel like you understand each other, you can then start using this technique as it directs the other person's attention towards your problems. These types of questions normally start with what or how, with the ultimate question being, how am I supposed to do that? Let's say your landlord was going to put up your rent to $1,700 a month and you didn't want to pay that much. You could say, it seems like you think your house is undervalued, but how am I supposed to pay $1,700 a month when I only make enough money to afford $1,500 a month? The key is to say it in a genuine way that doesn't seem confrontational. They should hear, I value your intelligence. Can you please help me solve my problem? Asking this type of question will make the other person think creatively or even lower their price. It's not a magic trick and it won't always work, but it's definitely worth giving it a shot. And here's a quick tip. If you're on the receiving end of this tactic, never let another person's problems become your problems. Understand them for sure, but remember, it's not your job to solve them. Or you might just find yourself caught in this trap. Good questions are really a superpower. That's why it's worth giving Better Small Talk a read. Step 5 is closing the deal. You must never ever leave a conversation with a potential buyer without a firm commitment. Otherwise, all the hard work will be for nothing. Objections, the ultimate guide for mastering the art and science of getting past no, recommends getting the potential buyer to agree to a specific action on a fixed date. This is known as micro commitment. When trying to secure a commitment, be prepared for potential objections. For instance, if someone says, I'm quite busy, how about you call me next week to arrange something? A possible response could be, my week is also looking pretty packed and I want to make sure I can dedicate the appropriate amount of time for our discussion to ensure you don't miss out. Can we schedule our meeting right now? Would Friday at 3:30 work for you? Obviously you can adjust the time to whatever works for you, but see how that question makes it much easier for the other person to say yes rather than objecting again. Of course, a bit of charisma can always help close a deal as well. Just think of the most popular closer on the TV show Suits, Harvey Specter. Interestingly, the actor is completely different from his role in the show. So this proves that charisma can be faked to some degree. If you're interested in learning more about this, consider reading The Charisma Myth. So how to market your business. Let's face it, you could have the best product or service in the world, but what's the use if nobody knows about it? Step 1 is developing your unique selling proposition. Ever found yourself wondering why some businesses explode and others just don't? Why people rave about one business and ignore another? Well, Purple Cow believes that the key is being remarkable. Every marketer is traditionally aware of the 5 Ps: product, positioning, pricing, publicity and promotion. However, this book introduces a 6th P, the Purple Cow. I know this might sound a bit strange, but stick with me. Imagine you're driving along a country road and you see a brown cow grazing. It's so common that you hardly notice it, much like the barrage of everyday marketing and advertising. Now, imagine instead seeing a purple cow. You'd stop the car, you'd get out, you'd take a selfie with it. It's noteworthy and you can't help but talk about it. Imagine if your business was like that purple cow, compelling people to talk about it. So think about what makes your business unique. What do you do better than anyone else? What unique value do you offer to your customers? Lots of businesses are using TikTok and YouTube to stand out, especially restaurants who are coming up with unique dishes that they're using as purple cows to draw in customers. If you want to dive more into creating videos, then YouTube Secrets, which is down here, just like that, gives you a really good insight into making viral content. Step 2, gather real-world data. If you want any hope marketing your product or service, then you need to know what people think about it. However, this is where most people make the mistake of asking the people closest to them for their thoughts. This results in them just giving you blind encouragement and generic support, which might be good for boosting your ego, but it won't help you market your product. The Mum Test offers a solution to this problem. It says that instead of saying, "Here's my business, what do you think?" you should instead ask about their life in the context of your business. I know this sounds confusing, but let me give you an example. Say you are starting an online course business that teaches people how to play the piano from the comfort of their own home. Instead of asking your friends and family if they like the idea, talk about them. If they play the piano, you could ask about the initial challenges they faced, the solutions they seeked out, and any frustrations they had with the solutions they found. If they don't play the piano, you could slightly tweak the questions. This is an extremely smart way to get useful data on your business, as it's almost impossible for anyone, even your mum, to give you blind support and encouragement. You can use this information to help identify blue oceans, which are areas of a market with low competition but very high demand. Step 3, establish your brand message. Despite having a USP and the necessary data, many new entrepreneurs struggle to capture the attention of potential customers. People don't like feeling sold to, and because of this, it's hard to get someone to listen long enough to actually get them to want to buy from you. Building a story brand says the solution is using a specific story structure in your marketing that cuts through the noise and holds people's attention. You first need to create a character. This character isn't your business, it's your target customer. This is because everyone sees themselves as the main character in their story. You need to make it very clear what this character wants. At this stage, it's best to stick to the universal desires like building wealth and status, higher quality relationships, or increased health. Next, your character should face a specific problem related to your product that they want to overcome. For instance, if you're running a piano teaching business, the external problem they'd want to overcome is not being good enough at playing the piano. Their internal struggle might be questioning their own abilities and if they're good enough. Here you can introduce your business as their guide to overcoming this problem and share past success stories to establish your authority. Both these elements build trust in you and your business. You need to be able to get this message across in multiple formats, but one of the most crucial is with writing. That's why it's worth giving Copywriting Secrets a read. The main takeaway here is to portray your potential customers as heroes in your marketing. This narrative structure, commonly known as the hero's journey, is frequently used in TV shows and films. If you make people into the hero of your story, they'll sit up and listen. Once you've sold to someone once, it's so much easier to sell to them again with the right strategy. That's why step 4 is create upsells. It's actually shocking how many businesses are leaving so much money on the table by not using this technique. .com Secrets teaches you exactly how to build a value ladder and sell higher priced products and services to your existing customers. You've probably already seen this in action at your local dentist and not even thought about it. Normally, a dental practice starts off by selling you a simple checkup. Next, they might offer you teeth cleaning, then teeth whitening. After that, a retainer, and before you know it, they've pushed you all the way up the ladder to their most expensive product, cosmetic surgery. This approach can be applied to any business you're starting. If customers have a great experience with your lower priced products, they're likely to continue climbing the ladder. It's also important to remember, if you don't provide options for them to spend more money with you, they may end up going to one of your competitors. Ideally, you shouldn't have to upsell people face to face. Expert Secrets outlines a way you can use the perfect webinar model to upsell many people at once whilst keeping that personal feel. But how do you make sure you never run out of customers to climb your value ladder? That's where step 5 comes in, driving up demand. If you followed all of the steps so far, you should have plenty of demand. But instead of trying to sell to everyone, you could try and limit your product or service and increase the price. Oversubscribed states that every product that is oversubscribed has people that didn't get it. even though they were willing to buy it. Rolex has mastered this strategy better than most. If you want to purchase a new Rolex, you have to visit an authorised store, join a long waiting list and patiently wait. This process can take up to 4 years before you're offered the chance to buy a watch. Some people never receive the call as Rolex doesn't deem them the right customer for their brand. Does this sound a bit snobby? Possibly, but does it work? Absolutely. If your product is seen as oversubscribed, competition becomes less of a concern and you have the flexibility to set your prices as you see fit. It's all about following the don't make me think principle. You've got to make it very easy for your customers to understand your website and messaging. So, how to manage your money like the 1%. This section is absolutely crucial. You won't believe how many people are amazing at almost everything else, but struggle when it comes to handling their cash. This is a big reason why 1 out of every 3 people earning over 100 grand a year are still living paycheck to paycheck. Step 1, monitor your finances. The Total Money Makeover, while not specifically focused on business finances, it does offer some valuable principles for keeping your money under control, which can be applied to business finances as well. Here's the major takeaway for all you entrepreneurs. Keep a sharp eye on your finances. It's so easy to get caught up in the daily hustle and bustle of running your business that you lose sight of your numbers. And before you know it, you're in a financial pickle without even realizing it. Think about it, financial laziness is a lot sneakier than physical laziness. It's not like you're forced to confront it every time you look in the mirror. You can just brush it under the rug and only start panicking when it's too late. So if you feel like you've lost touch with your financial situation, here's a little reality check for you. Ask yourself this: if all your revenue stopped coming in tomorrow, could you keep your business afloat for at least 3 months? If the answer's no, then sorry to break it to you, but you're financially out of shape. It's time to hit the financial gym. That brings us on to step 2, remain profitable. You might think being profitable is the same as being financially stable, but $10,000. When I was 18, I had no money and no qualifications, but I did have big ambitions. Instead of worrying about making millions, I set myself the smaller, more achievable goal of making 10K. Now, as a self-made millionaire, I can tell you that first $10,000 was the hardest to make, but once I hit it, everything changed. It wasn't just about the money, it was about proving to myself that making money is a skill and not luck. Once I figured out how to make 10K once, I knew I could do it again and again and eventually scale it into real wealth. So if I had to start from zero and make that first $10,000 all over again, this is exactly how I do it in 3 steps. Most people make this way harder than it needs to be. They jump into crypto because their friend made money from it, or they try day trading because some guru promised it would make them rich. The problem is, both these methods need huge upfront cash reserves and crazy luck. These aren't side hustles and they should never be seen as your main source of income. Instead, think of them as tools to multiply your money. When you're just starting out, you need something that requires a small amount of money to begin with and constantly puts cash in your pocket every day. When you strip away all the noise, there are only really 4 options. I've tried all of these and take it from me, this choice is crucial because some options offer higher scalability while others are more limited. In the same way, some generate quick cash while others take more time to make money. Option 1 is selling in-person services. Look, you've probably heard of these before, but I'm talking personal training, delivery driving, dog walking, nail designing, barbering, videography, and so many more. Although these services sound so common and basic, they're actually one of the fastest ways to make money. So don't overlook them as they give you a way to get paid immediately. It's also pretty cheap to get started. All you need is some skills and maybe a few tools, which means you can get up and running very quickly. If you choose to do this, then please don't mess around trying to build a website, run ads, or make a logo. Just get out there, find some customers in your local area, deliver the service, and get paid. I even did this when I was in my teens. I used to walk around rich neighbourhoods and offer to wash people's cars. I'd look out for tidy gardens but dirty vehicles. Now, this might sound strange. However, I was betting if they were obsessed over keeping their garden tidy, they'd also want a nice shiny car on their driveway to impress their neighbours. Because these kinds of services are limited by your local area, it meant my demand was pretty up and down. Some months were busy and others I struggled to make anything. When I was busy, I was only able to work with one person at a time, which capped how much I could make in a day. So in-person services are great to get started with, but you can quickly feel like they're limiting your potential. That brings me on to option 2, which is local products. This is selling things like home-baked goods, handmade items, artwork, fresh produce, and much more. This can be a great way to make money, but it's not something that happens overnight. Unlike services where you get paid as soon as the job's done, selling local products takes time. I gave this a go using some of the profits from my car washing business. I bought some cheap model plane parts, then spent some time building each one up, and then sold them to people at the RC Flying Club, which I went to on the weekends. However, I quickly realised I was putting a lot of work in for very little money. This was hard for me to come to terms with because I really enjoyed building them. Most of my earnings were being eaten up by the cost of materials, and on top of that, my customer base was very limited as there weren't enough people willing to pay what I needed to make it worth my time. So selling local products can be fun, and it's definitely worth it if you want to make some money from something you love. Option 3 is global products. This includes starting a clothing brand, drop shipping, sneaker reselling, print on demand, and so much more. Unlike in-person services or local products, going global means you have access to a much larger customer base, which gives you more opportunities to make money. You're not limited to just the people in your town or city. Anyone, anywhere can buy from you. I was so excited about launching my own global products. I even flew all the way to China to partner with a manufacturer to produce my model aeroplane designs and sell them worldwide. Of course, you don't have to do this if you choose to go down the drop shipping or print on demand routes. However, this wasn't really an option when I started. If I'm honest, things started off pretty slowly for me because I had to keep reinvesting my profits back into new products to sell. Every sale required more investment. Once I sold 10 items, I then needed to buy 20 more to keep up. Instead of pocketing the profits, my money kept getting trapped in this endless cycle of restocking. Ultimately, was it worth it? 100%. However, you should only do this if you have the patience to wait 1 to 3 months for everything to start kicking off. So when this is up and running, it is probably the most passive, laziest way to make money that actually works. So that brings us on to option 4. Selling online services. This option wasn't actually possible for me when I was younger, but this is such an advantage nowadays. There are so many different online services you can offer. These include copywriting, video editing, thumbnail design, running ads, social media management. The list goes on. Selling online services actually combines the 2 biggest benefits from the in-person services and global products. This is because you get the global reach, but the profit margins of a service. With products, you might make 20 to 30% margin that needs to be reinvested. With services, you're looking at 70 to 80% margins that go straight into your pocket. Plus, you can start making money from day one. Look, all of these are fantastic ways to make $10,000 as a student, especially these last 2 options. However, if I wanted to start making money as fast as possible, then I'd go with option 4, selling online services. So now we need to figure out exactly what online service to offer. So start by asking yourself 3 questions. What are you really good at? What do you enjoy learning about? And what problems do businesses consistently struggle with? The sweet spot is where your answers overlap. Most people get stuck at this stage as they spend months or even years trying to perfect their skill before offering it to anyone. That is totally backwards. You need to start getting real-world experience as quickly as possible. So start by setting your prices under the normal market rate. Your main aim here is to earn and learn at the same time. Now let's take this one step further. This is the skill pyramid, made up of 4 elements that when mastered together transform a high-income skill into a $10,000 income. Miss just one and you'll stay stuck at the bottom, working hard but never breaking through. Element 1 is positioning. You see, not all online services are equal. The real money is in offering to help businesses make more money. That's because businesses think about money differently to individuals. When a business is making $50,000 a month, spending $2,000 to solve a problem isn't a big deal, as long as it helps them make more money. And take it from me, they have a lot of these problems. They need more customers, they need better systems, they need to stand out from their competition, and they need to convert more leads into sales. These problems never go away, and businesses are always willing to pay to solve them. On top of this, some industries simply have more money to spend than others. And if you think about how you can reposition yourself, you'll start making real money faster. Here are some ideas to get you thinking. Instead of being a video editor for small YouTubers, you could edit videos for an entrepreneur who sells a product. If you make random thumbnails for clients, you could instead aim to become the main designer for an established creator. And if you're a copywriter, don't write cheap articles. Instead, focus on optimizing landing pages. This isn't about learning more skills. It's about putting yourself where the money's being made. Element 2 is leverage. You'll never make $10,000 without leveraging value over time. Businesses don't pay for effort, they pay for results. If you stop charging for the hours you work and instead for the return on investment you provide, you'll instantly make more money. Let's say you choose to run Facebook ads. If you charge per hour, you're stuck with a fixed rate, and the client will always want to keep your hours low. But if you charge based on the money you bring in for the business, suddenly they're not thinking about cost, they're thinking about profit. And when they see that your work is directly making them money, they'll happily pay you more for it. The same goes for if you decide to offer social media management. If you just schedule posts and reply to comments, you're replaceable. But if you can prove that your strategy is bringing in more engagement, more leads and more sales, you become a valuable asset, not just an expense. Trust me, the moment you shift your pitch from what you do to what they gain, you'll find a lot of people are suddenly willing to pay a lot more. Element 3 is reach. One of the biggest mistakes people make when starting out is thinking they always have to chase clients, but that's not how the game should be played. Right from the start, you need to be thinking about how to make clients come to you. Recently, I was looking for a graphic designer for a specific task, making movie-style posters. So the first thing I did was look on TikTok for people who made these kinds of designs, and one person dominated the search results. So I reached out to him and asked him for his prices. He told me he was just posting some of his designs for fun on TikTok. He wasn't even doing it as a side hustle, so politely declined. However, his videos kept growing in popularity and his inbox was flooded with DMs asking to work with him. A few weeks later, he reached back out to me asking how to start getting paid. I helped him set up a proper business and now he works for me and many other clients. This just goes to show that you should always be putting your work out there online, even if you're just starting out or just doing something because you enjoy it. You never know what opportunities might come from it. So if you edit videos, show before and after clips to highlight how much better your edits make the content. If you design thumbnails, explain why your design got more clicks. And if you're learning social media, document how you're growing an account from scratch. Element 4 is automation. 95% of people that try to start a side hustle or business fail before they even really get going. Here's why. After working with countless copywriters, thumbnail designers, web developers and video editors, I can tell you that 95% of them promise to deliver on time, then completely miss their deadlines. The thing that will make you stand out the most isn't talent or charisma, it's reliability. And overlooking this is the biggest mistake young people make when starting out. The people I've ended up paying thousands to aren't always the best at what they do, but they're the most organized. They never miss deadlines, they always communicate clearly, and they make working with them effortless. So take it from me. Being good at what you do is one thing, but being reliable is what gets you paid again and again. So how do you do this? Well, the most successful people I know don't rely on memory or messy notes. They use automation. And if you're thinking about making money online, you need something to help you keep track of everything. That's why I recommend using a CRM system. Odoo CRM is great. It helps you remember who you talked to, what they wanted, and what you need to do next. Instead of scrolling through emails or DMs trying to find what the client said, everything is in one place. I mean, you can visualize all your opportunities with this cool board, which helps you see the expected revenue at each stage so you know where to focus your efforts. You can also use it to schedule calls and meetings effortlessly. Plus, with your emails, notes and files all in one place, staying organized is very easy. You can use it to easily track your clients and projects so you never miss a deadline. You can set reminders to follow up with people so you always look professional. At the end of the day, clients don't just want someone skilled, they want someone they can count on. As I was planning on talking about them anyway, I reached out to Odoo to see if they wanted to sponsor this portion of the video, and they agreed. They also offer your first application completely free with unlimited support and hosting, so if that interests you, I'll drop a link in the description. I don't care how much money you make, until you see at least $1 million in your bank, you shouldn't be wasting it. The supercars, the designer clothes, the nights out, none of it matters unless you can turn your income into long-term wealth. The rich see their income as something to spend, whereas the wealthy use it to make more money. So how do you do this? Well, you need to start investing. In front of me, I've got a risk scale, and I'm going to walk you through the 4 key areas where I put my money, starting from the safest investments all the way up to the highest risk plays. Remember, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just sharing what's worked for me over the years. Let's kick this off with my high interest savings account. They call it a high interest savings account, but honestly, at 3%, I have no idea how to get away with that name. Now, sure, you can find better rates if you're willing to lock your money away for a set period or agree to strict deposit limits each month. But I don't want my savings held hostage. I want X in the middle. I call this the performance gap. The difference between someone who becomes a millionaire and someone who's just getting by lies in their obsession with closing this gap. Most people's paths look something like this, up and down all over the place, and they never reach their end goal. A person who becomes a millionaire in their 50s will have a path a bit more like this, eventually getting to their goal. Now, my path was a little bit different. Now, I managed to go from point A to point B pretty quickly. To be honest, I think the only reason I managed to bridge this gap was because I didn't have any other options. I wasn't particularly talented or smart. I didn't have any qualifications to lean on, and after getting bullied by my first boss, I quit the usual 9-to-5 grind. So I made a promise to myself to become wealthy as fast as possible. I did everything in my power to bridge the performance gap, and I became a millionaire in my 20s. If you only remember one thing from this video, then let it be this. The amount of money you make is always directly proportional to the amount of perceived value you give. To put it simply, the bigger the problems you're able to solve, the more money you'll make and the faster you'll bridge the performance gap. So the first thing I want you to do is draw out a Venn diagram like this. In this section, I want you to write down the things you like to do. So if I was doing this, I'll put down racing cars, flying planes, traveling, and playing golf. I'm sure you have a lot of others you can add, so just go crazy with it. In this next one, write down the things you're good at. Off the top of my head, I'd say having conversations, building and designing models, leading teams, and carpentry. And finally, write down the things that people will pay you a lot for. Let's put down consulting, building structures, and designing complex mechanics. The trap that most people fall into is only considering one of these factors when they're deciding what they want to do with their life. I mean, imagine choosing a job just because you love it, but you're stuck making minimum wage, and before you know it, you're hating what you once loved. Talk about a passion killer. Or picture this, you're good at something, so you make it your job, but you're working your fingers to the bone and still not making enough money. You're stuck in your comfort zone, not really going anywhere. And then there's this scenario where you pick a job just because it pays well, which sounds good, right? Well, not if you're miserable every single day. That's why the only solution to becoming rich and happy is to find something that's in all sections. I call this the value zone. I managed to find this early on by combining my passion for model helicopters with my skill for building models and advice people would pay for. This led me to opening multiple model shops and designing my own brand of models that I sold across the globe. The problem with the way most people look at business is they want to find the side hustle or the method first and then try to fit themselves around it, rather than nailing down their value zone and then finding the correct side hustle to start for them. So now you know how to find your value zone, it's time to pick the right vehicle to drive you in a straight line to your destination. Let me ask you a question. Would you rather have $1 million in assets or earn $1 million per year? Think about that for a second. Of course, you want both, right? Well, to do this, you're going to need two different vehicles. One for making money and the other one for investing money. Let's start with making money. This should be your active vehicle. Think of it like a motorbike. You can choose between a product-based business like I started, a content business like making YouTube videos, and my all-time favorite, a service-based business. So why is a service-based business my favorite when I produce products and also make YouTube videos? Might seem a bit strange, right? One word: timing. And I'm not talking about time in the market, but instead your career timing. Your initial side hustle should have the potential to rake in about 100k a year. But remember, the venture that catapults you to 1 million or even 10 million a year is not going to be the same. When you're starting, resources are usually pretty tight, so it's smarter to launch a service-based business as it has minimal setup costs. Even better if you could do it from a laptop in your spare time. So take a look at your diagram again and brainstorm a service you can offer within your value zone. Now for investing money. This should be your passive vehicle. Think of it like the sidecar on your motorbike. You know, like the one in Harry Potter. Loads of people treat investing like it's just another side hustle, chasing it with that same get-rich-quick mindset. But here's the real deal. Investing isn't about overnight riches. It's a tool to grow your wealth. And if you do it right, you can just set it and forget it. After you've made your free account, all you have to do is select pies. These pies represent different slices of stock. For instance, if you have a pie with 25% Tesla, 25% Meta, and say 50% Google, and you invest $100, it will be divided amongst those stocks. This means $25 would go into both Tesla and Meta, and $50 would go into Google. You can choose to make these investments at a frequency that suits you, daily, weekly, or monthly. Let's set one up together so you can follow this video step by step. You have the option to use pre-made pies, and there's lots of options in here, such as this one that focuses on companies that pay dividends, and this one here that invest in AI companies. Although this looks simple, please always do your own research into stocks you want to invest in, rather than just trust in the pie creators. This pre-made option is great to give you some ideas, but I encourage you to make your own. So let's go back to select build a custom pie. Now you can select whatever stocks you want to include in your pie. So if you're just a beginner, then simply click the S&P 500 index fund. This allows you to invest in around 500 of the largest public companies in the USA with just one click. This value projection is really awesome as well, as it shows you just how much you could make based on historical averages. I mean, say we invested £5 a day for 25 years. This says that you will have only invested £45,000 and your portfolio could be worth 1.04 million, and if we expand that to 40 years, you could have a portfolio worth 17.34 million. But hang on, Mark, isn't investing risky? Of course, stocks can go up and down, and even the S&P 500 has seen good and bad days. However, no one has ever lost any money if they've held for more than 20 years. Even when the market dips, all past dips since 1950 have been made up for by market rises. In simple words, the S&P 500 shows that playing the long game and sticking with your investments can be really worth it. It's personally made me millions without me having to do any work. That's why I'm such a big fan. Since I'm planning to talk about the Trading 212 app anyway, I reached out to them to see if they'd be interested in sponsoring this portion of the video. They agreed and are offering a free stock worth up to £100 to anyone that uses the code Tilbury when they create an account. Plus you get more free stocks by inviting your friends. Both of you will get a free share as long as they fund their account. Right, now you've nailed down your value zone, got your active money generating vehicle, and set up your passive investment app, it's time to think about the next section. One of the biggest lies gurus tell you is that you need 7 different income streams to become successful and reach your end goal. This causes people to get so caught up juggling multiple income sources and their social lives that they end up slowing down and losing their focus completely. You have 3 main limited resources: money, time, and energy. If you want to do this with me, grab a piece of paper and 3 different coloured pens. Firstly, make a list of everything you do in your life. This should include everything. Now draw a graph like this and divide it into segments corresponding to the number of items on your list. For my example, that would be 6 segments, but for you, it could be more or less. First, use a colour to shade in the proportion of money you spend on each segment every month. Then use a different colour to shade in the amount of time you spend on each activity monthly. Lastly, use yet another colour to show the amount of energy each task requires. You should have something that looks a bit like this. Here's the key: your resources will always be limited. While it might be possible to increase the amount of money you have, increasing your energy and especially your time just isn't possible. When I do this activity with people, it's amazing how much they spread their resources to all different areas of their life. Now, I do get work-life balance, but when you're trying to build your wealth at a quick pace, you really can't spread yourself too thinly. When I was building my first business, I put my head down and I worked like crazy. When I snapped out of it, I'd lost a large chunk of my social life, I was out of shape, and I hadn't spent very much time with my family. Now, was that healthy? Probably not. But did it make me successful? Very. I devoted all of my resources towards a single business for a multi-millionaire by the age of 35, and how you can do the exact same thing. So I've got a simple question for you. Do you want to be rich and have the freedom that comes with being financially stable? Many people do. Why do you think there's so many get-rich-quick schemes out there? Most people, though, unfortunately have a lottery mentality. They're just waiting for the magic fairy to come down and hand them $1 million. Do I look like the magic fairy to you? If the answer is no, and I really hope it is no, then smash that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. The truth is, lots of people think that winning a chunk of money will make all your problems just disappear. But they'll be in for an absolute shock. Without the correct investing and mindset strategies, it will be all gone, and in no time you'll be back to square one. You need a solid, consistent investment plan which gradually builds your wealth over time. Long-term investing will give great returns. When I was younger, I always wanted to be a race car driver. I just loved everything about cars, but I didn't have enough money to pursue my dreams. But as I started building up my investments, it allowed me to race in multiple championships and win countless trophies like this. I even got my helmet here, look. You sometimes see it at the back of the shots. How cool is that? My investments even allow me to spend time having fun making these YouTube videos, like the one you're watching. I don't currently make any money from this channel, and you can sit back and relax because I'm not going to try and sell you something at the end either. There are so many different investments out there. It's super easy to get distracted by the next shiny object. It's also confusing when you have someone telling you that this is the best thing, the latest and greatest, and if you don't invest, you could end up losing thousands. You may have heard of Bitcoin, penny stocks and short selling, but I found the key for me is not to get overwhelmed and distracted by the latest trends. Now, you've got to face it, you are never going to be an expert at everything, and by consistently changing your investing strategy, you ultimately end up with less money, and at some point you're going to make a big mistake. I have nothing against experimenting, but I've kept my main investments very consistent over the years, and I make sure to only invest large sums of money into things that I understand completely. I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers, but I am going to be completely transparent about everything I've done that's helped me acquire a multi-million-dollar net worth. I'm a businessman and not a financial advisor, so I don't consider this financial advice. It's just what I've done and it's worked for me. First of all, you need to create more disposable income. At the end of the day, you need money to invest, and the more money you have, the better, especially during your 20s and 30s. Now, lots of people will say to you, save, save, save. Don't go out with your friends. Don't drink that overpriced coffee. Don't buy that nice car. I don't completely agree. Of course, saving is a big part of this, but you have to enjoy your life. There's really no point making yourself miserable just for the sake of saving an extra few dollars. You should focus most of your time and energy on increasing your income. You can do this by learning new valuable skills, having a side hustle, or building a scalable business. You don't have to settle for money you get from your 9-to-5 job. You need to be focusing your time on finding ways to supplement or replace it. When I was in my early 20s, I realised my income as a carpenter, earning less than $3 an hour, was never going to give me enough money to invest. It hardly even paid my bills. I needed to find a way to dramatically increase this, and this is when I started my journey into the business world. Investing and business really work hand in hand. The saying is very true. The more you learn, the more you earn. And most importantly, the more you can invest. Be really aware of your lifestyle and make sure to keep it in check. Just because you're earning more doesn't mean you should be spending more. Think of someone like, say, I don't know, Ed Sheeran. He has a huge amount of money, yet he keeps his lifestyle in check. He still enjoys the little pleasures of life. If you were happy making, let's say, $40,000 a year, and you managed to increase your income up to $100,000 a year, that means you've got an extra $60K. This should be going straight into a high interest savings account and then into your investments. You know, you don't need to be spending it. Well, there is one slight exception, and that's stage number 2. Pay off all your high interest debts. If you have student loans, credit card bills, or even a payday loan, then these are pulling you down. They're destroying your credit score, which ruins your ability to take advantage of good loans. By paying off these high interest debts first, you'll actually save more money than you could ever hope to make elsewhere. The next stage is to create a freedom fund. This is my name for an emergency fund that puts the power back in your hands. This freedom fund consists of 3 to 5 months of living expenses. It protects you if you decide to quit your job, as well as a lot of other situations such as recessions, depressions, or even worldwide epidemics. Okay, so you've increased your income by learning a valuable skill, or maybe invested in your own business. You've kept your lifestyle in check, you've paid off all your loans, and you've created the freedom fund. Now, and only now, is the time to start looking at other options. Let's start off with the lowest risk option. Index funds. An index fund is a collection of investments that you can put your money into and own a percentage of the entire thing. This gives you a fantastic diversification and protects you from poor stock choices. For example, let's say you got $1,000 and you invest it in, I don't know, let's say Apple stock. As they're a big company, right? They're going to be safe. As soon as your money goes in, the company takes a turn for the worse, causing the stock price to crash. The result could be that you lose the majority of your investment. This is where index funds come in. Instead of owning just Apple stock, you could take that $1,000 and invest it in something like the S&P 500, which gives you small shares in Apple as well as Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Visa, Disney, and many more. You're a shareholder of all these major companies. Now, if something happened to Apple, it would be balanced out by the other investments in your index funds. Now, lots of people will try and convince you that a mutual fund is superior. A mutual fund is very, very similar to an index fund, except it's controlled by a very smart person whose job it is to pick the stocks in the fund. The purpose of a mutual fund is to try and beat the market and get better results for the investor. However, in the vast majority of cases, you'd be much better off putting your money into a simple index fund with less risk and often a greater return. This is because index funds charge extremely low fees. The S&P 500 charges 0.07% annually, and mutual funds charge high fees between 1 to 2% of your account balance annually. If you invested $10,000 into a mutual fund, then $200 would go straight into that fund manager's wallet every single year, even if he caused you to lose money through poor stock choices. On the flip side, if you had the same amount invested in the S&P 500 index fund, then only $7, yes, just $7 would be leaving your account annually. This is because index funds are passively managed and therefore don't have to pay a manager who may or may not be doing a good job. For long-term investments, I love using Vanguard index funds as I like these. They're so easy to use. I'm not affiliated with Vanguard in any way. I just like the way it works. I also like to mix it up a little bit with some international funds and bonds to diversify my portfolio even more. The older you are, the more bonds I recommend you invest in. And I don't mean James Bond either, although he is pretty cool. The investment method I put the majority of my money into is real estate. I am much more of a real estate guy than a stock guy. I like real investments I can feel and touch, but I appreciate that it can be hard to buy properties with little money, but it's certainly something you should be saving for. My first property was a 1-bedroom apartment and I loved it. It was mine. It cost me around $50,000. And when I moved out, I decided to rent it $500 a month. I had this property for around about 10 years, and when I sold it for 150k. And after this, I was obsessed with the money that we could make from real estate. Now this is a good time to decide which type of investor you are. The first type is a capital gains investor. This is someone who likes to buy low and sell high and pocket the difference. These are investors that are interested in buying houses of auctions, or you may have seen the signs outside advertising that